Hello, and welcome to our Australian market update. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm the Managing Director at People to People here in Sydney. I'm very happy to be hosting today. Thank you for joining us. This is a broadcast that we do every week with the Jobs and Employment Market update around what's happening in Australia. Today, though, I'm really pleased to say that we've got a particular theme which I think will be interesting and appealing to a lot of people, and it really is about the impact that office dogs can have on mental health. So what is the real impact on wellbeing? So on the show today, we are joined by someone who can talk to us a lot about that area. Are dog-friendly workplaces the key to improving wellbeing? That's the question. And this week, as I said, we're joined by Grant Shannon, who's the founder at 𝐷ogs_Connect, to explore how dogs can support your employees' mental health and the wellbeing both in and outside the office. So really looking forward to that conversation. Also on today's show, are fewer Australians leaving their jobs? We've got some data that I can share with you that speaks to that a little bit. We'll also explore our latest job opportunities across Australia, some of them really urgent and to start as quickly as Monday. And we will reveal our new social media polls where we ask if you think that AI is helping or hurting your hiring processes. So a survey of just over 30,000 people revealed that 90% believe that just having the presence of a dog in the workplace helps reduce stress and day-to-day anxiety. Here at People to People, we're in the midst of celebrating the 5th anniversary of Oz Top Dog. That's our annual feel-good competition, one of my favourite times of the year, and it highlights the positive impact that dogs have on our lives and particularly on our mental health. It's the perfect time to ask, I think, are dog-friendly workplaces more than just a trend? And what real impact can dogs have on employee wellbeing and mental health? So to discuss this further, we're joined today by Grant Shannon, founder at 𝐷ogs_Connect. So thanks so much for joining us, Grant.
Thanks for having me, Catherine.
No problem. Now, would you mind just giving us a little bit of a background as we kick off around yourself, but what 𝐷ogs_Connect is all about and what kind of inspired you to start it as well?
Yeah, certainly. 𝐷ogs_Connect supports organisations in building process and protocol around having a dog as a member of the community. So a member of the organisation, a member of the broader community for some of those organisations. And there's quite a bit to it because it is, to do it really well and to sustain it and to make sure that it's really healthy in terms of the dog's perspective, it takes a few layers to build. And, that's what we do. We support organisations in building the layers, in making sure things are at a really healthy level of preparation, planning, process, and that turns into best practice, hopefully. So we support small organisations, lots of schools. We've got some really big hospitals. We work with the justice setting. So we've got a broad range of organisations that, they think it's a really good idea to have a dog as a member of the community, but they don't really know how to do it in a way that not only ticks all the boxes, but makes sure that the dog is really well factored into. So that's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. And what inspired you to start doing that? What was the reasoning that that's what you chose?
I was working at the time as a school teacher and finding that there was, from my perspective, there was a need for something else, and it was about connection. I felt like I was working with young people who didn't really want to be in the school or in the room. And, that applies across the board in workplaces, not just young people at school. Quite often it can be difficult to be at work or at school for different reasons. And so my thinking was, what else could there be? I just so happened to be working in a school that had a working farm, and I was managing the farm, and I was seeing people who were 10 years old, who was really struggling in that classroom setting. I was seeing a different side to them when we were around the animals. And so, I figured we can't really bring a pig into the classroom or a cow, but we could potentially work on connection with an appropriate animal in a classroom. And of course, dogs I have a special affiliation with. So that's where it was born.
Yeah, right. I've said, just as an aside, in my daughter's primary school, there is definitely a school dog. I don't know what the background is, but yeah, that dog is there, and I see just how the kids who may be a little bit marginalised or tend to be sort of on the outer, they really makes a big difference for them. So that's really cool. So from your experience, how do anyone who owns or has been around a dog can probably think of some things here. But how do dogs emotionally affect people, and what impact have you witnessed around mental health and well-being in the workplace, out of the workplace? Any kind of particular standout moments that you would share with us?
Well, to go back to how does it affect us, and how does that connection, it really is about the connection. So when we know that there's really strong science that underpins the fact that this is a really positive impact for lots of people. Like you said in the beginning, Catherine, 90% of people say that they think it's powerful and positive. Certainly it's not for everyone. What we're seeing in the science is that it's enabling people to shift through the connection with the dog that they are authentically connected with, which is the key that I'll touch on a little bit later. But they're able to shift their state of being on the level of the autonomic nervous system. So shifting from, in really layman's terms, shifting from not feeling so okay to shifting way more likely to feel okay really quickly, really easily, and really naturally is what that connection can do. It can also, I mean, we see science, lots of us are aware of the fact that connection with a dog can be, it can result in a release of oxytocin just through looking into the eyes of a dog and having the dog looking back into our eyes. Actually, the dog has a release of oxytocin at the same time, so it's mutually beneficial, which is another key that I'd love to touch on. So we know that it's really powerful on a deep level for humans, on the autonomic nervous system level. Standout moments, I think, I've got one moment in my mind where seeing in a big hospital some caregivers come out of surgery, and the dog who was present at the time and a resident there, his name was Jack, some caregivers just came over and were so relieved and happy, and so I guess the pressure just came out straight away. They'd come out of a very, very high pressure situation, and seeing a number of times that these caregivers would come straight over to the dog and have tears just streaming down their face due to the connection and how that changed the way they felt. And I mean, it wasn't sadness. It was, it was relief. It was joy.
Yeah.
It was something that meant a lot to these people. That's something I'll never forget seeing. I guess another one that's really cool.
There's such a lack of judgment, I think, from dogs, isn't there? I think my little dog who greets me at the end of the day, and obviously that's not in a workplace, but there's just this open-hearted, I take you as you are kind of, that's certainly how it makes me feel. So I imagine that happens for other people as well.
Yeah, it's unconditional. And, one other quick standout is I had a staff member in an organisation come to me and say, just pulled me aside, and she said, just would love to share with you that I was done with this organisation. I was leaving. I was on the verge of a breakdown due to the pressure that I'm under here, and I'm still here and I'm staying. And the only reason I'm staying here is because of my connection with that animal. And that was just huge for her.
Wow. Yeah, wow. So that's probably a nice segue in terms of in workplaces specifically, and I've got two questions around workplaces. The first is, what are some of the maybe unexpected impacts that you notice that a dog might have within a workplace once they're really embedded? What do you see that, maybe you or maybe the workplace wasn't expecting to sort of see from having that dog become part of their community?
It's a great question. One of the ones that stands out all the time to me is the social cohesion, the talking that goes on around the interacting with the dog, and people start to share stories about their dogs. That turns into outside lives coming into the workplace, and that really is socialising. So that's been amazing to witness in a lot of different organisations. Something that we didn't really intend to be an outcome was the amount of people in management that tell me that their staff are now represented in the data truly as taking their sick leave only on the days that they know the dog is not there. And so that is pretty quickly usually followed in that conversation by, we're going to need another dog. So that wasn't intended either for it to be an outcome for us. So they're really cool kind of.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. What about, I know even just from conversations that I might have, and it's by no means my area of expertise, but I think there probably can be some misconceptions in workplaces around allowing dogs in the office and, what they sort of need to do or how to get ready. So what are some of those common misconceptions, and are there any ideas you could share sort of how that can be addressed if I'm an employer or a workplace wanting to kind of advocate for this to start to happen in my workplace?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The most common misconception is that if you train a dog and have a dog pass a test or become certified, that it's good to go. And that's a misconception because there's no attachment to that concept of preparing the actual setting and having people really well informed and educated around what's expected of them when a dog does start to come into the place. So that's the most common misconception, that it's about training a dog. And when we can flip that around a little bit and just slightly change the lens and say, it's not really, it's about making sure that we're prepared to consider and plan for and understand this being as another sentient being that has his or her own emotional experiences. When we can bring that in as process that we've built understanding around, and the thing I wanted to come back to is this is about connection, and we have to make sure that the connection, for it to be authentic, it is offered as a mutually reciprocal opportunity. That means dogs must have choice. That's probably the main oversight for people, that they think the dog's trained, bring him in, it's all good.
Right.
Quite often that brings with it a lack of choice for dogs because there's a high level of expectation.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's really, really interesting. The couple of times when I brought my little dog in here, a lot of those things you said around the benefits, I definitely saw that almost instantly. People just seemed happier and more engaged, and people talking to each other who maybe normally weren't particularly, connected. So yeah, definitely seen it in action. And if people are interested to find out a little bit more about your organisation, I know we've got your details on the screen there. So Dogs Connect is where they can go, and I'm sure you'd be happy for people to reach out and find out a little bit more from you.
Absolutely. We'll be here if anybody wants to talk more.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us, Grant.
Thanks, Catherine.
So to the numbers now, and I mentioned that there's been some data released recently around Australians leaving their jobs, and it indicates that fewer Australians are leaving their jobs than has been happening historically. So just to drill down into that a little bit more, job mobility has dropped to 8%. So that's 1.1 million job changes, and that's the lowest level that it's been since February 2021. So less people moving around, essentially. High replacement rates persist. So 24% of employers are replacing staff every 3 to 6 months. But in terms of the job mobility, that is down on what the previous periods had been. The top reasons for leaving that were cited in this data analysis was better opportunities in terms of salary potentially, so pay dissatisfaction, a poor job fit, and also boredom. That's one of the things that people cited, that they're just, I guess, a bit over it. But the impact for businesses when there is that sort of turnover is there's training burdens for new hires. Of course, there's lower productivity. There's a bit of strain on the existing team if there's not enough resourcing. So the retention strategies that we're seeing organisations use that tend to have an impact are, of course, pay always talks, so higher pay, flexibility, and flexibility means lots of different things to lots of different people. It's not necessarily about working at home or working in the office, but having that openness to a conversation around flexibility, upskilling, giving people opportunities to learn new skills and sort of those lateral sideways moves, not necessarily up the ladder, and then always culture and any improvements that can be made around culture. So, yeah, interesting data. I was a little bit surprised to see that the job mobility had dropped, but there's still, people obviously still moving around, and there's some data that came through around the reasons people are leaving and the reasons people are staying. So we might move now to some of the jobs that we need to get filled quickly with our hot jobs. Okay, so as you can see on the screen there's a number of roles that we're working on. There's a mix of temporary positions and also salaried permanent positions. So in Melbourne, we're looking for a law clerk. That's a permanent position paying $100,000 to $115,000. We're looking for a marketing manager for a temporary assignment here in Sydney. So that's an hourly rate, and you can see that there on the screen. Brisbane, the team up there is looking for an executive assistant for a permanent position. And then in Perth, there's a senior paralegal position, which I believe is also a permanent role. So all of the links to those particular positions will be shared in the comments. If you jump onto our website at any time, you'll see all of the roles that we have advertised, or you can also connect with any of the relevant consultants who would be in your location or work across the area that you specialise in as well. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on all of the social channels. Jump on our website and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.